you probably saw this, but the Biden administration, President Biden, the White House, has been ordered by a federal judge to cease communication with social media websites after it was shown that this administration was actively calling for political enemies or narrative dissenters to be blocked, blacklisted, or removed if they went against the DC approved narrative.
Right.
Does this shock you? Like, this, to me, as an independent journalist, feels like this should be a story I'm covering out of Russia, not out of the United States.
Well, look, I've been saying for a while that the progressive left is engaging in what I call "quote unquote" Soviet level wrongdoing. That's what I call the wiretapping of President Trump back in March of 2017 when we first learned this. This is all Soviet level stuff, and yeah, it is what it looks like it is. It's Soviet level control of perception, creating narratives, not the truth, engaging in the suppression of free thought and free speech. It is what it is. And yes, this has become an official tool. And by the way, FBI engaged in this, DHS engaged in this, all under Trump. Trump didn't again, this is one of my criticisms. Just let me get this out there because I know people get upset when I say this, but it's like Trump allowed a lot of this to happen. Trump had appointed people who did not understand or were not able to comprehend what their own bureaucracies were creating regarding this Orwellian system of oversight, interaction, and governance of information. So much of what Biden had inherited was already there. It's just they had to pick it up and use it, and that's dangerous. So Trump made a couple mistakes. Listen to Tony Fauci, that's a huge mistake. Did not understand the power of the bureaucracies to go against him. That's a huge mistake. And some of this now has to be rectified. But yes, that's what they are doing. And this ruling, it's an injunction. It's temporary. It's based on the state of Missouri, basically pointing out correctly that they were prohibited from using truthful information as part of their expression of what it is. And a lot of people were damaged by that. And to include me, I was suspended for a year from Twitter. I think I was blacklisted because, Stephen, I think you and I have talked about this. The day I started trolling Ray Epps, the day I got Ray Epps to respond to one of my tweets, within an hour of that, I was permanently suspended for violations of something, whatever. And I think this is what was going on. And yeah, I think there has to be a total prohibition. I mean, let me just say this. I said this the other day with Congressman Crane. If I had the opinion, Stephen, that you are an outgrowth, that you were actually created in a laboratory in Area 51 in an alien hybrid program, and I decide that, he's a government official, say you're a congressman, and I have an opinion that you are an alien hybrid, X-Files type alien. That's my right to believe that. It's not true, but I have that right because I'm an American, and I can say I can be as stupid as I want. But in the case of the government, they can't come in and say, well, Schaefer's going to draw attention to Area 51. We got to shut him up. Nonsense. The government does not have that right. They cannot trample on the right of American citizens simply because they have a difference of opinion about something that relates to you or me or something else. And that's what they engaged in. And this was becoming routine. That's the other thing to think about. This was becoming routine. This was becoming completely embedded within the political system and process that exists. This is using national security mechanisms to benefit a political party and political individual, in this case, Joe Biden. So this can never be permitted. This is only a first step. It needs to be expanded, and it has to be permanent. And I don't know how they're going to do that, but Congress has to act on this to make sure that nobody, neither side, has the right to use national security mechanisms to create conditions to benefit one or the other political parties. So,
yeah. And just for the record, I am not an alien human hybrid.
Thank you for that clarification.
So have you ever been to the White House or the West Wing near the Oval Office?
Yes, quite a few times.
Okay. how easy or difficult would it be to smuggle cocaine into what should be the most secure building or office in the entire world?
Nearly impossible. Look, I don't want to give away all. So I'm going to be very careful. I'm a member of law enforcement of Virginia, so I do feel obligated to be very careful how I talk about the Secret Service and what they do. I've visited several times. It's public record. People can Google it. I was there for a number of visits. At even the Obama White House. I was there twice at the Obama White House on issues relating to electromagnetic pulse. You know, I worked that issue as a think tank guy, and I was there talking with his staff a couple times, and several times with the Trump administration. So I'm familiar with what you go through, and kind of I've talked to the Secret Service guys. I know what they do. There's no way you could get any measurable amount of drug through the Secret Service screening process. Zero chance. I can't tell you how, but they do a thorough screening when you don't even know you're being screened. Just saying.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want you to reveal
So
any secrets.
just saying. And so there's no way. You'd have to have badge access. That is to say, you show a badge and you drive in. You drive in, you know, people who work there can drive in. Like John Kelly, when John was chief of staff, you know, he had a little parking space. He would show his badge, do that. They'd go through, no screening. So you had to have that level of access before you could get any sort of drug in. That's it is what it is. So nobody who was officially screened and permitted to go through the process of where they went through as a visitor could have gotten anything in. It's not possible. You had to have someone who had free and unencumbered access. That is to say, they're in a car, they drive through a gate, they get out and walk into the building. That's the only way drugs would have gotten in. And I only have a handful of folks who I think would have done it. So
yeah, well, I think that they will find out who it is, and then it will be deemed an unsolvable mystery.
So I don't know if you were watching the video of the Bidens on the Truman, whatever you call it. They were on the for the watching of the 4th of July fireworks, the Truman balcony, and I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've got 31 years in recovery. I've been around drug folks, people who are, you know, Hunter Biden was on drugs. I'm just saying. I'm looking at that photo. I've seen people tweaking. He was tweaking. I'm just telling you, he's sweating profusely. He's, you know, doing all this other stuff. It was manic. I'm telling you, he is not clean and sober. And I'm saying this as someone who's been around folks a long time seeing this.
Yeah. Yeah. That we'll see how this story develops as well. Okay, just a couple of more questions. I know how valuable your time is. Is the United States in a new Cold War with China?
Yes.
We're seeing them block important key metals and elements. Now the United States, instead of sending over a seasoned diplomat like John Huntsman Jr., who speaks perfect Chinese, we're sending over Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who can't even accurately predict inflation. What is going on? Why is the United States sending over such weak representatives? And again, you've said we are in a new Cold War with China.
Yeah.
Where do you think this goes from here forward?
The people that the Biden administration's picked for these jobs are incompetent by design. Yellen is incompetent, and that's who they want. Peter Buttigieg is incompetent, cannot manage the trend, and they want that. They want the failures you're seeing. They want the failure with China. There's no doubt in my mind. That's why you see this deference to them. The question is who benefits most from the failing policies, and for the most part, it's folks who want a one world government. They want things to fail and be difficult. That's why you see all of these policies, which clearly they state the objective to be one thing and it comes out the other way. So I think that's where it's all going. But the Chinese issue is deeper than I think people fully understand. We're not the only issue, and I would argue we may not even be the biggest issue China's worried about. India is becoming a net competitor with China. If you look at the Himalayas, and by the way, I love certain friends of mine who don't agree with my China perspective, because they say China is simply trying to establish itself as a global trading power, and that's their interest, and they're not aggressive. I think the people of Tibet would probably disagree with that, since China did invade and occupy Tibet and still do, and they did that because of reasons that I'm about to explain. The Chinese need and spend as much money on potable sources of water as they do on defense. You have a huge population that depends on it. The Chinese use, basically, the United States and China consume the same amount of water every year, but their population is way bigger than ours. So think about that. I mean, we have plenty of water. I could go out, and fill my pool 15 times, and no big deal. You can't do that in China. Water becomes as important in gold in some parts of that country during certain times. So that is an issue. And by the way, they're competitive with water, India. And so when you look at that, you have to understand that there are conflicts within conflicts that are ongoing right now. So, and there's the issue of the CPAC. This is a road that, not our CPAC, their CPAC. It's a road that they've created from China through Pakistan down to the ocean, because they want to be able to bypass the Straits of Malacca. This is part of their BRICS, part of the Belt and Road Initiative. It's all related. So none of the things I've just mentioned have anything to do with us. Not a thing. But these are things which actually do impact on the thinking of China every day. These are huge issues which we don't fully appreciate. I mean, you and I do. We all talk about it because we actually study this. Other people don't look at this. You'll never see the New York Times talking about what we're talking about, because they have no interest in telling the truth. So my point here, the reason I'm going off on this path, is to help illustrate the fact that we're not the biggest deal that the Chinese necessarily have to deal with. We are indeed the biggest economic power. They covet our economy. They covet what we have. They want that. But they also understand destroying it wholesale, creating conditions where the United States fails as a power, is not in their interest either. So this is where they want to suppress our ability to do things against them. Will they go to war against us? Yeah, I think they're arrogant enough to think they can win. I don't think they will. I think it'd be bloody. But we're not the only issue. There's issues regarding India right now on the frontier. There are exchanges of war every day. There's treaties where they literally have guys with machetes and sticks beating up on each other at the border. There's something like 60,000 troops on the Chinese side, something like 200,000 on the Indian side. My numbers may be off. I don't have the notes in front of me, but there's troops standing too on the border between China and India. So these are things that we don't even think about that impact on the Chinese thinking. So when you have an annoyance like Blinken or Yellen, it's like, yeah, I'm going to give him lip service, whatever. We're going to continue to do things to undermine your political process. We just don't care. We are not going to respect you. Go away, little man. Go away, little girl. So that's why you see this utter disregard for us, because we're not the biggest issue they face on a daily basis. And are they worried about us? Yeah. Are they building up a military force that could challenge us? Yeah. But we're not the only thing. So we have to get over ourselves. This is another thing I see. We project our culture all the time. We're not necessarily the biggest issue China's worried about any given day. Are we one of them? Yeah. Are we in the top 5? Absolutely. So I'm just saying that when we look at the China issue, we look at the China challenges, we have to put it in a larger context of trying to understand everything that they're facing, so that we can try to, if we're going to do something to manage it, we have to understand every aspect of what they're dealing with so we can manage it. And I would argue the Biden folks do not. But what we're talking about would be like talking an alien language to the Biden administration.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's interesting is they're like, we're sending over Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and then the media is like, and we fully expect nothing to come of it. Like, whoa, you're prefacing a very important diplomatic mission with nothing's going to come of it. So then why even go? Same thing. We're sending over world-renowned Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, former head of the Fed, but we expect nothing to come of it. Why does the media even do that? Is it because they're trying to set our expectations to expect nothing of it?
No, this is actually a mental deficiency of those in the administration. Let me explain this a little bit, because I face this in the military. There's two things that people need to understand, and I teach, and when I do courses, I've taught this at U.S. Army War College. Measures of performance versus measures of effectiveness, MOP versus MOE. I believe, and I teach, people need to be establishing systems which are monitored and overseen and judged by measures of effectiveness. When you establish an objective, were you able to establish mechanisms and resources and leadership to achieve that objective? Were you effective? MOE versus MOP. And this is what our problem was with Afghanistan and all these other wars we don't win. People establish measures of performance which have no relation to being effective. It's like, that's why you see all these generals succeeding. They get all these medals and promotions, but, oh, we lost the war. But I performed to the standard I was given. We did all these things. That's what the Biden folks do. They establish this artificial standard, then they're going to perform to that standard. Oh, I met Xi, and I checked the box. It's successful. They are focused solely on the process. They could care less about the outcome. So to them, Stephen, an action passed is an action completed, to quote some of my lawyer friends regarding how they do things. Yeah, I met with them. I'm successful. No, you weren't successful. You weren't remotely successful. You didn't achieve anything. All you did was essentially create conditions for the continued antagonism of the Chinese government against the U.S. government. But in their view, they were successful. And Blinken, if you talk to Tony Blinken right now, he would look you square in the eye and say, my mission to China was successful. I continued the dialogue. Even though the dialogue resulted in nothing, and I would argue in detrimental outcome. They don't care. That's not what they care about. And look, I'm a Reagan guy. You know that, Stephen. I talk about this with a number of folks. I've been friends and mentored. I'm very proud to be a mentoree of the Reagan folks. Reagan always insisted on an outcome that you could look at and see. This is something that happened. Measures of effectiveness. Were you effective? That standard does not exist within the Biden administration, dare I say, most of the federal government at this point.
Right. Wow. Well, this has been a very detailed and fascinating and insightful conversation. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to come on and inform the American people what's really going on. So thank you for being on today's show.